Long story short, I was talking to a very conservative woman at the Paris Air Show who was from Mississippi, and she was probably 65, 70. She says, Senator Vance, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but when I was in New York City recently, I saw a grown man who was walking around in a mini skirt, and then she gets very quiet and she said, Senator Vance, I could see his balls.
He probably wanted you to see his balls.
And you realize, oh my God, this is not empowerment. This is not respecting lifestyle choices.
Right. He wants to be the VP. Okay, so that is JD Vance on with Joe Rogan. And I'm sure the campaign thought, hey, the Trump talk with Joe Rogan went better than we expected. Donald Trump didn't seemingly soil himself or fall asleep during the interview. There were no especially large controversies or anything. Let's send in JD Vance. And I don't know what this is supposed to be. I think that he's telling the sort of anecdotes about insane trans people that I guess he thinks that Joe Rogan's gonna be a fan of. And Joe Rogan, to his credit, I guess looked game to imply that if one person wore clothing that revealed too much skin, you don't need to respect a group of millions and millions of Americans. But I don't know if it's really going to win over a lot of swing voters, because the interview was weird in the clip that you saw. It's going to get even weirder. JD Vance is not content to just talk about people walking around on the street. He wants to bring it much closer to home for the people listening to that show. Listen to this.
You have kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Every single day, my 4-year-old or 2-year-old will come to me and say something that is bat insane because they're 4 and 2.
Yeah.
Like my 4-year-old will come and say, Daddy, I'm a dinosaur. Right? I'm going to take him to like the dinosaur transition clinic and put scales on him. And
well, the other thing is, like, if you were encouraging them, and some parents, it's just I'm just going to say it, even though it sounds gross, they want their kid to be a part of the LGBTQ thing because it looks like a flag of virtue that they can post in their front lawn. Oh, look, we have a queer child. Like, oh, you're amazing. There's a weird thing about it with some of these nutty parents where you could imagine them. There has to be some reason why this enormous percentage of Hollywood kids are trans. Like, how many celebrities have trans kids? It's new. It's not a thing that was going on just a few. It was rare in the past.
It becomes a social signifier for a lot of parents.
I will never be able to understand how two men who have been able to get into their 40s, presumably they're able to keep themselves fed, they remember to breathe oxygen, they generally put on clothing and all that, can't understand that there's a difference between something being more common and people feeling like they can acknowledge it at a higher rate. That doesn't seem like a super complex concept. I don't think you need to get a master's degree to understand it, but there's a lot that either they don't understand or they feel they need to pretend to not understand to win over voters. And so, according to JD Vance, this is what he wants to focus on, by the way, and not just him and the Republicans. They're putting tons of money into ads that focus exclusively on trans people who are obviously the source of all of the problems in your life. The idea that a person who might be 14 or 16 or 18 or maybe 40 years old that thinks that they're trans is the exact same thing as a kid saying, "Rawr, I'm a T-Rex." And that's how we should talk about these people. We should imply that they're best case scenario crazy, I guess. More likely they just don't know what they want and will mock about putting scales on them and stuff. Again, I don't think that this is a winning strategy. Polls seem to indicate that even Republicans are sick of this focus because it's all they've heard out of these people for literally years. And we're gonna get to other issues. They talk about abortion and things like that, but Cenk, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so I don't want to let his confessions slide by, and then I want to get into a projection that he's doing. He said at the end of that conversation we showed you guys, we're letting a grown man walk around in a miniskirt in broad daylight. Yes, we are. That's called freedom. That's called America. So what do you want to do? You want to say you're not free, you're not allowed to wear any clothing you like. Now, tyrannical government is going to tell you what clothes you can wear and what you could look like and what you could do with your body. And like fundamentalist religion is back. And so you no longer have any choices and you have to follow JD Vance's version of religion. And by the way, he's Catholic now, apparently. I don't believe him at all about anything he says about religion. I think he's a giant fraud. I think he's one of the largest frauds we have in American politics. I think his conversion is total nonsense. I think he's an atheist. I think he's a guy who was a liberal all along. That's why he thought Trump was Hitler. And the grift that he had was, oh, I fit into affirmative action too, because I'm dude, you're a straight white guy. I'm a hillbilly. Yeah, I need to fill your hillbilly quota, okay? And so that was his way of getting into Yale and getting into these schools. And by the way, if you don't know the history of it, look into it. To be fair, liberals at the time ate that up. They were like, oh, hillbilly, oh yes, he's in a vulnerable community. And so he worked that angle, he worked it. And then he realized, oh yeah, there's a better grift on the right. I can make up any crap I want and they'll believe it. Right now I get to take away people's freedoms and I'm gonna get more power. Oh, my career is going to be even better than the other kids who went to Yale. Him and Vivek remind me so much of every snot-nosed kid that I went to school with who was like, I'm gonna go to a better law firm than you. I'm going to a better finance place than you. So before you were a hillbilly going, hey, I need a quota, right? Oh, please take me into Yale, please, right? Now, oh, Trump's Hitler, right? He's 40, it's not like he's 68 and had a change of mind in the middle of his life. He turned around on a dime, went from Hitler to he's George Washington, we need to get him elected. And by the way, take away everybody's freedoms. All the stuff I said before, I don't mean any of it, okay? You walk around in clothing I don't like, I'm coming after you. So when he says that trans kids are doing what? They're changing their entire gender to get into Yale? No, brother, you changed your entire identity to get into Yale. That's called projection. They're not anywhere near as greasy as you are, so don't label them that way because they aren't you. So I've got a friend who's got a transgender kid. Man, we knew from day one, right? So you think that they changed to get into an Ivy League school at the age of 6 or 7 or 13 or whenever, it's a wide range. People realize at different times. Look, if he said reasonable things, we can get into 100 other hypotheticals, right? Hey, look, I'm a little bit worried about social contagion. Is it, around the edges, et cetera? Obviously, I understand that there's a lot of people who don't have the same identity I do, and I respect that, and I believe in freedom, et cetera. But hey, I just want to make sure people are sure before they do anything, before they get to 18. Maybe we could have a reasonable conversation. But when you just smear and attack and say, no one gets to be anything other than what I say, that was just a disastrous interview, and we're just getting started on it. Sharon.
Yeah, and he's a lawyer. And while I do think there's plenty of interesting people to see, some letting it air out in New York, I don't believe for a second that this guy had a 65-year-old woman from Mississippi whisper a damn thing to him. It did not happen. Perhaps he was on a late night chat with Mark Robinson and the subject came up, but this didn't happen. This is meant to divide us. This is meant to distract us. This is meant to keep from talking about the real issues. It's interesting. It's shocking sometimes for people, but he's a liar, okay? All he's ever done is lie and pivot and contort, change into different things at different times. It's actually scary how many different personalities he's presented, not in the last 20 years, but in the last 6 months.
Yeah, it honestly makes me wonder, let's say that Trump loses and he rapidly declines physically and mentally over the next 18 months or so. I think that's best case scenario for him. And the Trump thing isn't gonna dominate the Republican Party. What will JD Vance be pitching himself as in 4 years? Who will he be? Will he be the next Paul Ryan? I wonder. But in any event, as I did say, the interview got weirder. So we're gonna play 2 utterly bizarre clips, thematically linked. Here's the first.
Look at where the gender craziness is the most common. It's most common among upper middle class to lower middle class white progressives. Think about the incentives. People are very good at rationalizing things. If you are a, middle class or upper middle class white parent, and the only thing that you care about is whether your child goes into Harvard or Yale, obviously that pathway has become a lot harder for a lot of upper middle class kids. But the one way that those people can participate in the DEI bureaucracy in this country is to be trans. And is there a dynamic that's going on where if you become trans, that is the way to reject your white privilege, right? That's the social signifier.
Yeah.
The only one that's available in the hyper woke mindset is if you become gender non-binary.
That clip right there is a great example of why so many people find the Joe Rogan Experience so frustrating, and the fact that it's one of the most popular podcasts in the world. A guy like JD Vance, who is a known demonstrable liar, says the craziest thing you've ever heard based on absolutely nothing, and Joe Rogan's immediate response is, not, that's BS. Where are you getting that from? Show me one kid that has done this to get into Princeton. It's made up. He just made it up. All of that is insane. And if you were an interviewer, that is how you should respond to it. Unfortunately, Joe Rogan, I guess, thought that it was plausible. That, yeah, families are like, you know what's super popular these days and not controversial? Being trans, that's how you're gonna get into Brown. Madness. Nobody has ever done that. And even if they had, even if these things that we might define as being on the edge or whatever did exist in one case study, what other groups' fundamental rights rely on the presence of nothing extreme on the edges? Like, for instance, there are people for whom them being white is the most important thing in the world. They'll kill people because of how proud they are to be white. We still allow other people to identify as white. We don't lock them up just because on the edges some people take it too far. There are violent, murderous misogynists. Other guys are still allowed to be proud to be men. You see how like the peripheral stuff doesn't necessarily define the government's stance on an entire group of millions of people? The entire thing is utterly absurd. Before we discuss though, I do want to just turn to one more strange clip from the twisted inner workings of JD Vance's mind. Take a look.
And I think that, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if me and Trump won just the normal gay guy vote. Because, again, they just wanted to be left the hell alone. And now you have all this crazy stuff on top of it that they're like, well, no, we didn't want to give pharmaceutical products to 9-year-olds who are transitioning their genders. We just wanted to be left the hell alone.
So again, maybe there's other groups that would like to be left the hell alone. Have you considered that? And it's super rich coming from a guy trying to be the Republican VP to be like, oh no, we're super cool with like normal gay guys now. We haven't spent literally decades trying to bar them from donating blood, getting married, being able to adopt, literally any right you can think of. Many Republicans are still actively trying to strip those away from even normal gay guys. But I guess, now we're really focused on the trans people. So I guess we'll allow normal gay guys to exist and we'll turn them against trans people too. How about you leave all of them alone? How about you focus less on other people's sex life and what's going on inside of their pants, focus more on whatever is happening in your own twisted marriage, and be honest about what you actually want to accomplish as president. Absurd nonsense and almost no pushback on any of this.
I mean, when you said worried about what's going on in other people's pants, I mean, in that story in France, they're like literally looking down or up the skirt. Oh yeah, I see the testicles. I see them. Congratulations. Okay, yeah, you must be so proud. I told you, first clip, you saw it right there, Projection City, because he had to find an angle. Remember what he was saying? Oh, you're a straight white guy. You got no angle to get into Yale. Oh, he found an angle, being a hillbilly, right? Oh, you got to change your identity in order to find an angle. Okay, so first, all of a sudden, you're a hillbilly, but then you're a Yale law guy, and you're, a guy who is sucking up to the liberal world, which he did. And all of a sudden, you change your identity to become a right winger because you were looking for an angle. You were a venture capitalist. That's how you made all of your money. You were created in a petri lab by Peter Thiel, one of the biggest funders in Silicon Valley. And then all of a sudden, took a turn on your identity, populist. I'm a populist.
And Catholic.
Yeah, are you?
Now.
Are you a populist? Are you a right winger? Are you anything? Okay, all I know about you is you'll say anything to get ahead. Okay, so now the other part of it is, regular gay guys are voting for us. Are they? I looked at the polling, 7.5%. 7.5%. They're like, no, all the gay guys who are paying like Dave Rubin are on our side. okay, and a couple of guys who want tax cuts. And then he said later in the interview, he's like, actually, we think that supporting trans people is being homophobic towards gay guys. What? Okay, we're not even trying to make sense anymore. So this is the kind of, you know what, and one more thing about that, guys. Real populism is standing up for the average person, standing up for their rights, standing up for their freedom, standing up for their wages, healthcare, etc. Looking out for the average guy and not the bankers or venture capitalists or giant Silicon Valley donors, right? But he can't do that because he works for the giant Silicon Valley donors and he is a venture capitalist. So he does fake populism of like, oh yeah, don't we all hate trans people? Yeah, I'm such a populist because I hate people. That ain't populism, man. You're nothing but a fraud.
That was a good Dangerfield, by the way, right there.
That's pretty good. Listen, he made an argument for suckers, and Joe Rogan must be one. Okay, it's really that simple. To think that people are just running to alter themselves or be true to themselves just to get into one of these stuffy Ivy League schools is ridiculous. The truth is, trans people are 2.5 more times likely than the rest of us to be violently victimized, okay? They even have their property stolen at a rate 2 times the rest of us. It's ridiculous. And to make the argument that, well, white kids, upper middle class white kids can't get into these Ivy League schools, so they're doing this, is also ridiculous. The last time I checked, Harvard and some other schools had to get real creative just to lay diversity things on the table and consider them during the admissions process. Joe Rogan didn't push back. He didn't push back hard enough at all in any way that mattered. JD Vance is just going on different outlets and filibustering and making it up as he goes along. And it's a sickness, but American people, some are still eating it up and taking it like it's fact as he plays to their worst fears.
I also think that there's been a lot of great examples of like the facade that is right-wing populism, but a guy like him who went to these sorts of schools, as you described, because of his own unique identity that he came up with, telling all of these people whose kids will never be able to afford to go to these schools that they should be freaked out about the fact that fictional people who don't exist are pretending to be trans to get into that schools, while ignoring the fact that the kids of wealthy people who already went to those schools can get an easy, free, clear ride in. Don't even think about that. Certainly don't question that. Utterly ridiculous.
Oh, I got to say one last thing about it. I know I'm getting obsessed on this topic, but are really a lot of trans kids thinking about going to the Ivies? That's like their top concern? No, that's JD Vance's top concern. They're trying to get through life. Are you kidding me? They're going through this traumatic experience where at least half the people in their life, or most of them, are yelling at them not to do it and they're crazy. And then you got these guys like JD Vance who are screaming at them and calling them all sorts of names, etc. And you think their top concern is getting into the Ivies? No, that's your top concern because you're a greasy careerist. And you think they're gonna do gender reassignment surgery because they'd like to advance their career through the Ivies? No, see that's JD Vance telling on himself, saying, I would do anything for my career and to get into an Ivy League school, etc.
I didn't even want to write the essays for these applications. He thinks people are strapping to a gurney. Maybe some people are more ambitious than me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.